Joining us now, live to discuss this report, is former Vice President Dick Cheney. Mr. Vice President, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Brett.
First of all, your overall impression to this report, what's in it and its release?
Well, I think it's a terrible piece of work, basically. It seems to me it's deeply flawed. They didn't bother to interview key people involved in the program. And I think that it's a sort of a classic example, which you see too often in Washington, where a group of politicians get together and sort of throw the professionals under the bus. We've seen it happen before. I can remember Iran-Contra. What happened here was that we asked the agency to go take steps and put in place programs that were designed to catch the bastards who killed 3,000 of us on 9/11 and to make sure it didn't happen again. And that's exactly what they did, and they deserve a lot of credit, not the kind of condemnation that they're receiving from the Senate Democrats.
The Feinstein report suggests that President Bush was not fully briefed on the program and was deliberately kept in the dark by the CIA.
Not true. Didn't happen. Read his book. He talks about it extensively in his memoirs. He was, in fact, an integral part of the program. He had to approve it before we went forward with it.
Was there ever a point when you believed you knew more about the program and how the U.S. government was interrogating than the President did?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I mean, there were lots of things I read while he was doing other things. He had a much broader portfolio than I did, and I spent a lot of my time just on national security. But I think that he knew everything he needed to know and wanted to know about the program, and there's no question.
I mean, did he know the details?
I think he knew certainly the techniques. That we did discuss the techniques. There's nothing. There was no effort on our part to keep him from that. He was just as with the terrorist surveillance program. On the terrorist surveillance program, he had to personally sign off on that every 30 to 45 days. So the notion that the committee's trying to peddle it, somehow the agency was operating on a rogue basis and we weren't being told or the president wasn't being told, it was just a flat-out lie.
I mean, the report suggests it was 4 years before he was briefed. 2006.
Read his book. He talks about first with respect to the detention program and then with respect to the enhanced interrogation program. It started in the summer of '02, and he was fully informed.
New York Times writes it this way about the report. When told about one detainee being chained to the ceiling of his cell, clothed in a diaper and forced to urinate and defecate on himself, even a president known for his dead or alive swagger expressed discomfort. True?
I don't have any idea. I've never heard of such a thing. Brett, I guess partly what really bugs me as I watch all this process unfold is the men and women of the CIA did exactly what we wanted to have them do in terms of taking on this program. We said, we've got to go use enhanced techniques that we're going to find out. And we've got Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who's the mastermind of 9/11, who has killed 3,000 Americans, taken down the World Trade Center, hit the Pentagon, would have taken out the White House or the Capitol building if, in fact, they hadn't been for the passengers on United 93. Now, he is in our possession. We know he's the architect. And what are we supposed to do? Kiss him on both cheeks and say, please, please, tell us what you know? Of course not. We did exactly what needed to be done in order to catch those who were guilty on 9/11 and to prevent a further attack. And we were successful on both parts.
This report says it was not successful.
The report's full of crap, excuse me. I said hooey yesterday. Let me use the real word.
You're on cable.
It's okay. You can bleep it. Yeah, okay.
But you're saying that this led to actionable intelligence.
Absolutely. Look at the statement by the former directors and deputy directors of the CIA issued just within the last 24 hours. It did, in fact, produce actionable intelligence that was vital in the success of keeping the country safe from further attacks.
Mr. Vice President, some of the tactics, though, described in this report are horrifying. I mean, is there anything that U.S. officials, interrogators, are alleged to have done that you would consider torture?
I don't know all the allegations that are out there. Torture was something we very carefully avoided. One of the reasons we went to the Justice Department on the program was because we wanted them to tell us where's the line legally between what's acceptable and what isn't, and they did. That's what came forth in the legal opinion that we got before proceeding with the program, Brett. This is in terms of there being some problems in the program. There may well have been, but I don't think they represented that the Senate report represents the truth of what actually happened. They put together a report without ever talking to anybody who's involved in the program.
But at one point, this report describes interrogators pureeing food of one detainee and inserting it in his anus, something the agency called rectal rehydration. I mean, is that torture?
I don't know anything about that specific instance. I can't speak to that. I guess the question is, what are you prepared to do in order to get the truth about future attacks against the United States? Now, that was not one of the authorized or approved techniques. There were 12 of them, as I recall. They were all techniques that we used in training on our own people, even waterboarding. People have been very concerned about waterboarding, calling it torture. First of all, it was not deemed torture by the lawyers. And secondly, it worked. It, in fact, provided us the information we needed to prevent future attacks.
How intimately involved were you involved in the legal process of setting up that justification? In other words, the frame for torture was narrowed in these legal decisions. A memo in August 2002 that essentially reframed Geneva rules on torture and said the president had a lot more authority. You were intimately involved.
Strongly supportive of the program, strongly supportive of the opinions coming out of the Justice Department. The work that was done was, I think, absolutely essential and absolutely crucial. And I guess the thing that always struck me was how careful the agency was in coming forward and saying, yes, we can do the following, but we need authorization. We need a legal opinion out of the Justice Department about what's copacetic, what's legitimate, and we need the approval of the President of the United States and the National Security Council. And they got both. And they did a hell of a job.
But you rewrote the justification.
I didn't rewrite the justification. The lawyers wrote it over in the Office of Legal Counsel and the Justice Department.
You had an intimate role in dealing with it.
I was strongly supportive of the program. I didn't read the opinion and say you've got to change this and change that. But my job as a vice president who was actively involved in the national security area was to push to get programs like this in place, which in fact the CIA said they could produce better results if they had more authority. Well, we got them that authority.
You had one detainee, Gul Rahman, who died in captivity, November 2002.
3,000 Americans died on 9/11 because of what these guys did. And I have no sympathy for them. I don't know the specific details. I'm sure there were instances cited in the report. I haven't read the report, but I know for a fact.
No, wait, you haven't read it?
6,000 pages?
No, but how about 500 summaries?
I've seen parts of it. I read summaries of it. I keep coming back again to the basic fundamental proposition, Brett. How nice do you want to be to the murderers of 3,000 Americans on 9/11?
What do you say to the people who say America is better than these methods that John McCain takes to the Senate floor yesterday? Gives a pretty impassioned speech. Take a listen just to a piece of it, and I'll have you react to it.
I dispute wholeheartedly that it was right for them to use these methods, which this report makes clear were neither in the best interests of justice, nor our security, nor the ideals we have sacrificed so much blood and treasure to defend. We are always Americans, and different, stronger, and better than those who would destroy us.
Your reaction to that, sir?
My reaction to that is that John and I had a fundamental disagreement about the program. I think that what needed to be done was done. I think we were perfectly justified in doing it, and I'd do it again in a minute.
We are back with former Vice President Dick Cheney. Mr. Vice President, defenders of the program and of you say people forget the prism in which you were dealing with post 9/11. Days after that attack, you told late Tim Russert this.
We also have to work, though, sort of the dark side, if you will. We're going to spend time in the shadows and in the intelligence world. It's going to be vital for us to use any means at our disposal, basically, to achieve our objective.
So, Mr. Vice President, we have been attacked. I mean, there's Boston and Fort Hood and other attempts, but not a spectacular attack.
Not a mass casualty
since
attack
9/11.
Right.
So, did the ends justify the means?
Absolutely.
No doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind. I'm totally comfortable with it, Brett. I think you've got to remember partly what was going on as well too during this period of time. We had reporting that Al Qaeda was trying to get their hands on nuclear weapons, that they'd been dealing with Pakistanis, who after all have nuclear weapons. We had the anthrax attacks going on here at home. There was every reason to expect there was going to be a follow-on attack. And from our perspective, if you were sitting in my chair, the president's chair, our job is to keep the country safe and secure and go get those guys who hit us on 9/11. And that's exactly what we did. We did what we felt was necessary. The professionals in the intelligence community, especially at the CIA, did one hell of a job, and they deserve our gratitude.
You've been supportive of the Obama administration's use of drones, one of the few things you're supportive of the Obama administration on, but
that's a fair statement.
To take out terrorists. Do you find it disingenuous, their indignation about these techniques? While they're not interrogating many terrorists at all, they're killing them in these strikes.
Well, if we started the drone program, and I think under certain circumstances, depending on the target and so forth, it's the right thing to do. The thing that's worrisome is they are not capturing anybody. They don't have an interrogation program. If they got Zawahiri tomorrow, the current head of Al Qaeda, what would they do with him? I'm perfectly happy to see him dead, but he's a very valuable source of information and intelligence. I think we need first-class intelligence programs. I think that's what we had with respect to the enhanced interrogation program, with the approval of the President and the National Security Council and the lawyers of the Justice Department. It's the right thing to do. Cheryl
Shelley writes on Facebook, had the tactics not been used, what would have happened? What events were prevented?
Well, I think if you look at the examples cited by the former directors, there was a prospective attack on the West Coast, one of the tallest buildings on the West Coast, with a hijacked aircraft that was thwarted by this. There are a number of examples that have been laid out over the years.
I mean, the President talked about it in 2006. Mm-hmm. Were there others beyond that?
Yeah, look specifically at the statement that was released today by the former directors, Mike Hayden, George Tenet, Porter Goss, where they lay out specifically those things that in their minds, and I think they're the experts, were prevented by virtue of these techniques.
Senator Udall took to the floor today saying a Panetta review says that is, in your words, hooey. Mm-hmm. He says that there's just not direct linkage to that.
I don't know where he was on 9/11, but he wasn't in the bunker.
The end.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of critics. Some of them say that you should be behind bars. Mm-hmm. Colonel Wilkerson, who worked for Secretary Powell, said, we all have to wear the taint Richard Bruce Cheney brought down on us with his full-throated endorsement of inhuman and evil methods of causing pain, humiliation, and harm to other human beings. It's wrong that there's no consequences for those who perpetrated it, and it's wrong that Cheney isn't languishing in a privatized prison somewhere.
I guess you'd have to call him not a fan.
Not a fan.
Not a fan.
Is there anything to the Geneva Convention, to the world rule of law on this issue?
Sure there is, but remember the terrorists were not covered by the Geneva Convention. They were unlawful combatants, and under those circumstances they were not entitled to the normal kinds of courtesies and treatment you would accord to those. Nonetheless, the people we captured, especially the folks that went down to Guantanamo, have been treated very well. The high-value detainees of Al Qaeda, after we'd finished with the interrogation program, all were transferred to Al Qaeda, where many of them are today, being treated very reasonably. We did what we needed to do to keep this country safe. That was our job, and we did it, and I think the agency deserves a lot of credit for it.
Last thing, you think Jeb Bush is going to run?
I don't know.
Do you have a favorite?
I have not signed on with anybody at this point. I don't want to start naming people, or I'll leave somebody out. But I think it's going to be a great campaign year, and I think we're going to win.
Mr. Vice President, thanks for the time.
It's good to be here, Brett.